Okay, now we are discussing how to do completing the square on the algebraic expressions. Okay, completing the square. Okay, so for quadratic, there are three forms that we can do completing the square. Okay, what do we have? We have algebraic expressions. Okay, algebraic equations and algebraic functions. Okay, algebraic functions. Yeah. So what's the difference between all the three of them? For an algebraic expressions, basically what we have is, for example, a quadratic algebraic expressions that will be something like this. Okay, so it's just an expressions representing numbers, and algebraic equations equations itself telling us that there is an equal sign is equal to 0. There's an algebraic equations. Algebraic functions, I just like our quadratic functions. It can be something like y equal to, right, or sometimes they write it fx, or it's a function of x. Okay, so that is the three form. So now let's take a look how to do completing the square for all these that can be used for all these three form. Okay, so then let's take a look at completing the square. So talking about completing the square, first of all, the most basic completing the square, okay, we do completing the square for an algebraic expressions, or for an expressions. So for an expression itself, right, so first thing, what should we do? Right, first of all, okay, we are only doing algebraic completing the square for these two terms, x squared plus 4x. Okay, the x square and the x term, the constant term, we just leave it one side. So how do I do it? Okay, so let's take a look. So first of all, before we start doing completing a square, we must make sure that the coefficient of x squared, it must be 1. Okay, a must be 1. If a is not 1, or rather positive 1, we must do some factorization. Later we go through some or scenario. Okay, so now let's take a look for this. Okay, so how should we go about doing it? Okay, so first of all, x squared plus 4x, so we always plus, so here we always plus what? Plus b is 4, so it's 4 over 2 squared. Okay, for an expressions, in order not to change the value itself, so we will need to minus exactly the same thing. Then the next thing, we put back the constant. Okay, so now what we are going to do is, for this, we are trying to do factorizations of it. How do we do it? It's very simple. So it's x squared, so I have an x. Okay, this is a plus, so plus this one, 4 over 2. Okay, I use the color, 4 over 2 squared, and the rest I just copy exactly the same thing. Okay, so now let's simplify this. Okay, so this is how we do completing the square. Okay, so that is completing the square, or for an algebraic expressions. So remember, this is algebraic expressions itself. Okay, so now let's use another example. Right, so this is when a is 1, or a is positive 1, then we do this. So how about if a is a negative 1 or negative 1? So how shall we go about doing that? So now I use an equations, algebraic equations, right? Algebraic equations. Okay. If it's algebraic equations, how are you going to do completing the square for it? Okay, so now I use the same. So if let's say I have this, say minus a. Okay, so I have this. So how should I go about doing it? So same thing, when you do computing the square, we are just dealing with the x square and the x term. So I need to make the coefficient of x square to be positive. So since it's a negative 1, so I will factorize negative 1 or negative. So if I factorize negative 1, that will become x squared plus 6x. Okay, my minus 8, I just leave it there. Okay, so now let's do the computing the square. So I'm only using x squared and x terms. So it's x squared plus 6x. So what should I do? I should always plus 6 over 2. If I plus this, I must minus exactly the same thing. Okay, so this is how we do computing the square. Okay, so you can see that for this part itself, it's basically exactly the same as this one. Okay, so we are just doing the same thing. It's just that now there's a square bracket there. So yeah, I miss out my equal sign. No, here no need because they're equations. So now minus the same thing, x plus, because this is plus. Okay, then I put down the 6 over 2 here. 6 over 2 here. Squared. Then my minus 6 over 2 squared is still here. Okay, so now I will do my completeness. Then I will simplify it a bit. Okay, so now I need to open up my square brackets. So expansion of square brackets, this is one term, there's two terms here. So is minus x plus 3 squared. Minus minus is plus. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, so that is, okay, we do completing the square. So later we can use this to solve our equations after completing the square. Okay, so that is when we are doing completing the square. This is for a negative x square. At the same time, is an algebraic equations. Okay, so how about if that set is it's not negative, it's not 1, it's 2, 3, 4, is an so how do we go about doing that? So now let's use an algebraic functions. Okay, we use an algebraic functions for example. So let's say I have a function here, y equal to, let's say I have a minus 2x squared minus no, let's use positive first. Okay, it's a 2x squared plus, let's say 6x. Okay, plus 6x minus, let's say 5. Okay, minus 5. Okay, so how should I go about doing completing the square? So same thing. Okay, I'm not interested in the x square and the x term. Okay, so I must make sure that my coefficient of x square must be 1. So this is 2, so I need to factorize. So how should I factorize? We are doing x square x term, so I just deal with these two terms. Okay, so first thing, what should I do? I should factorize out 2. So now become a x square plus 3x minus 5. Right, so now my x square is, the coefficient x square is 1. So I'll do completing the square. So same thing, square brackets, okay, plus 3x. So it's always, here is always plus, because this is 3, so it's 3 over 2 squared. Right, where I plus, I must minus. Also remember, it's balance it. Okay, first bracket. Okay, the minus 5, I just leave it there. So next, what should I do? It's 2. Right, so I do the factorizations. This one, so it's x, because it's a plus, so this is a plus, and 3 over 2. Right, 3 over 2 square. Okay, 3 over 2 and square. Then what do I have here? Here will be a minus 3 over 2 square. Okay. Okay, so next I just do some Let's simplify it a bit. 3 over 2 still 3 over 2. This is 9 over 4. Okay, then I open up the square bracket, so how do I say it? It is 2 times this one, or this term itself, so is will give me 2x plus 3 over 2 squared. After that, use another color, so this times this one, right? So it will give me minus 9 over 4 times 2, minus 5. Okay, so now let me simplify a bit. Okay, so this is what I have, and next that will be this. I just need to press calculator. You will get 5 is 10 over 2, so it will be 19 over 2. Okay, so yeah, sorry, I need to put in all the y here. This y is always here. Okay, because this is an algebraic functions. Okay.